Performance, a 3CR program broadcasting quality performance of music and the spoken word.
To Melbourne's Community Radio, 837 3CR.
Him the sinner and the sage meet. And even the sin is transformed. In him, even the sage is transformed to become a worldly being. In him, even the sage is transformed to become a worldly being.
Ken Smeaton recorded this interview with Daevid Allen during July '82, not long after Allen had returned from a quick trip to London to mix his soon-to-be-released latest albums. David's work is on London's Charlie label. Daevid Allen is an Australian poet, musician, performer who, after travelling to Paris in '61, became involved in the Burroughs Ginsberg Machine Poets School. Gong and Soft Machine are two cult psychedelic bands of the '60s that were born out of Allen's musical talent. This interview highlights David's search for truth, meaning, and the poetical way. In this, part 2 of the interview, Ken asked David why he'd left Australia.
I wasn't interested in houses, clothes, cars and all this stuff. I was basically, I suppose what you'd call in those days, bohemian. It was even before the beatnik era. And to have long hair was an amazing statement to make. And I had long hair, and I would have guys trembling all over come up to me in pubs and grab me by the scruff of the neck and saying, "Get a haircut, you asshole!" We're freaking out, you know, and I had a very fresh complexion, sort of the old English pink cheeks or something, and I looked kind of feminine, and that really offended people, because in those days, everyone, I think basically, you know, it was a totally homosexual society whereby all the men drinking in bars, but nobody was out front about it, and I wasn't homosexual, and yet I looked kind of like a butch lesbian, you know, and these guys, they couldn't handle it. But basically the reason why I left was because there was no future for music here. What was the point of playing jazz in Australia? You know, I mean, when jazz was born in America, or even in Europe, there was more jazz going on. What was the point of writing poetry in a place where the Poetry Society was about the only outlet for reading poetry, or even hearing poetry, and where poetry was just weak imitation, weak cup of tea, academic slop? Was horrifying. The only poet that ever turned me on in that period was Ern Malley, who was himself a non-existent poet and was supposed to be a send-up, and yet to me that was beautiful poetry, best poetry that had been produced up till then. Couldn't stand any of the others. So what was there? There was painting was starting to come on, but at that stage I was at the National Gallery Art School, but you know, it just seemed to me that I wanted to get out of Australia. I didn't know why I'd been born here. There was nothing going on here. Everyone was totally 1950s, thin, materialistic, Australian American dream, something or other, hamburgers, you know, rock and roll didn't interest me. I wanted to get where there was culture. I wanted
this than she, and even more so, neither he nor she is God, and it is God, and it is God, and it is God, and it is God, and it. That's all I ask, it's all I ask. Which way goes? While I hinge my heart, while I drench myself.
Today, Daevid Allen continues his life story. Escaping what he considers Australia's cultural vacuum, he meets William Burroughs, who happens to live in the same hotel in Paris.
One day in this hotel, I was coming up the stairs to go and visit somebody up on the top. This was the inevitable hipster pusher up the top. You know, we were always making their way up to the top to get smoke with the guy. And I was on my way up or on my way down or something, and I go past this grey-looking figure. It looks like something out of an office, out of some kind of a cheap tailor's in downtown Brooklyn or something. And it's I look at this guy's face. I think that's William Burroughs, and it was William Burroughs. So the guy who lived next to me, I find William Burroughs living up above, introduces me to the guy, and there is the guy sitting in this room. He's got this bed which looks like it's an iron rung bed, and there's this office table in the middle. It's totally bare. There's nothing in the room except this table with a whole bunch of wire paper containers, like an office, you know, those things that people pile papers on an office file. And he's sitting there with his hat on and these glasses and a grey suit, looking exactly like some kind of weird, freaked out businessman with this sort of really grey, junky face.
Very actively heir to the Burroughs millions.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. It came behind him. He killed his wife, of course. He shot his wife right through the brains at one point. Well,
in Mexico,
yeah, it was in Mexico, so he wasn't ever had up for that. He was trying to do the apple. He said to me, Dave, he said, there's two ways of getting wisdom. Kind of wisdom that I'm offering you. One takes about 5 minutes, and the other one takes about 30 years. Which one do you want?
Well.
It was kind of complicated. I was playing a kind of funny role because I was kind of having to sort of give him a slight sort of a come on, but without actually ever getting raped. It was sort of a very delicate tightrope walk.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fun. It was actually kind of fun. So I said, okay. But the thing was that anyway, we got talking, and he offered me a place, notch, in his show, which is called Machine Poets. And it was a series of little shows under the umbrella title of Machine Poets, and he was the star, and he had a group of poets who basically circled around him.
Yes.
So I joined this group.
Machine.
Burroughs is sitting on a stage, and he was sitting, and he just would read like in this kind of grey, monotonous voice, but it had this immense theatrical power. And while he was sitting there against this white screen, very subtly, without noticing, it took a lot of measurements, and everything was perfectly distanced and stuff, and the exact projection of himself sitting there, in other words, a slide projection of him sitting there in exactly the same costume, was projected over the top of him, so that you got this slightly blurred kind of thing about him after a while, and you just thought your eyes were going out of focus. And then at the end of his reading, he just got up and left an image of himself on the wall. And that was that was considered to be very, very good. Yeah, it was. It was a very clever, very subtle thing to do, and also technically pretty difficult.
And what did you do?
I did a show which was a variety of different ways of working with tapes. I'd have music on tape, and I'd speak the poem over the music, and then I'd have my own voice reading one line, and then on the tape, and then my live voice, I would shout the reply on, and then my voice would come back. And other ones I had groups of voices making funny backgrounds to my own voice live, various permutations of live and recorded voice together with projections of my face, wearing various different kinds of curious stainless steel glasses and odd things, bits of painting on my face and so on. The effect was rather surrealistic. This was about 10 years. No, it was about 6 years before that. You couldn't really, I mean, the Swanson Family Hotel thing was an important thing for me. It was like where I was born. I mean, we all got arrested when the Swanson Family Hotel got closed down and turned into a bank, and that experience was an important experience. I mean, mixing with those people was an important experience. There's a lot of real bubbly, kind of mad stuff going on, but it was really a social group of different people from all kinds of different artistic fields, most of whom split the country.
I think I'm lazy. It's just my condition. I just watch you fashion. Try not to be passionate. Man, think I'm losing, but I'm only trying to lose myself. Never wanna be on the shelf. I'm trying to get me to shut my mouth. And I think I'm losing, but I'm only trying to fade away. Some games you don't have to play. I guess I have to go my way. I guess I have to go my way. You know, heaven, city, hour, night, slave, you know, tomorrow,
PIP, People in Performance, a 3CR program broadcasting quality performance of music and the spoken word.